Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Q1 of 2024 DBE Task Force meeting. I love to see all the names roll in as everyone kind of gets logged in. My name is Rebecca Morris. I'm the president of Arizona Builders Exchange. We are your consultant for the DBE Task Force facilitating. If you'd like to use the chat, please do take a moment to introduce yourself. We love to see kind of the rolling chat, right? So if you want to introduce yourself, your name, your title, your company, if you'd like, it's really great to get a little bit of networking. We love to see names in virtual meetings, like at least see who else is here. And then also just a housekeeping note, if you would like to ask any questions of the panel, of the presentation, please do use the Q&A. So that is a little bit different in Zoom. It'll be on your toolbar. So whether that's at the bottom or the side, kind of however you're set up, please do use the Q&A. So we do have quite a bit of material we want to get covered. So we want to make sure we get to those. If you have a question, ask it. And we'll do our best to either handle it during the presentation, during the Q&A, or if we need to, we'll always provide a written answer later. So we can always do that if there's something that we need to do a little bit of research on. So I see some people using the chat already. It's great to see you. Good morning, Devin and Erica. Please do, if you want to say hello in the chat, make sure the drop down is changed to everyone. So that will enable all the attendees to see it versus just the speakers. So good morning, Desiree and Anthony with Advanced Laser Restoration. Good morning, Karen and Carrie. Great to see everybody. So with that, I believe everybody's kind of logged in. We always have a dead minute or two where we want to get people going. So with that, I'm going to ask Greg Byers, our state engineer, if you could turn your camera on and your microphone on and provide an update. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca, and good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for being here today. I think you're getting ready to hear some really good information. You've got some good speakers. Amanda's going to help out quite a bit. We've got Barry Crockett as well as several others to give you some very good information going forward. So as far as any updates go, one of the biggest things I think that we have going is on Friday, we're going to publish the tentative 5-year program that the State Transportation Board approved at their last board meeting. This 5-year program, or at least the tentative program, is the largest 5-year program that ADOT has ever put out. So there are a lot of projects. There's a lot of funding out there for projects. And for the first 2 years of the 5-year program, there's a tremendous amount of work that's getting ready to come out. So this is exciting times. This is an excellent opportunity for any DBE, whether going as a prime or as a subcontractor. This is really good. So we have a lot coming up, and a lot of the information that's being provided today is going to be kind of crucial for anyone that's looking at becoming a prime. Pre-qualification is a must and really needs to get done as soon as possible if you're thinking of priming any of the projects that we have coming out. We have currently several projects that are ongoing. We've got we kicked off our I-10 corridor with the Gila River Bridge, and we've got multiple other projects that are getting ready to go on that 26-mile corridor. So it is fully funded with the grant that we received from FHWA. We're now fully funded for that project, so that's huge for us. Really looking forward to getting going on that. And with that, I think that's pretty much what I had. Like I said, a lot coming up, so stay tuned. So thank you very much.
Greg, that's exciting. I know last year was an enormous 5-year state transportation improvement program. So if this year is even larger, I will be awaiting the release on Friday. Can't wait to see it. So thank you so much. Greg, I'll invite you to turn your camera off and your microphone off. And Amanda, I didn't even need to say anything. Already camera on, mic on. Barry Crockett, if I could have you also turn your camera on and your microphone on. We will be getting in touch with him. Barry, if he's in the attendee side, let's make sure. There you are. Okay, Barry, we're gonna move you over to the panelist side. Sorry, I actually didn't see that. So Barry will be joining us with cameras and mics in just a moment. But I would like to introduce Amanda McGinnis. Amanda McGinnis, I would say you're like semi-retired, but not really, because you keep doing stuff. I see you more now that you were somewhat retired than I think I did when you were with the AGC for, you know, however many years. So thank you so much. This was actually your idea. You said, hey, we think that we should do a topic. I think there's a need in the market to kind of cover this topic, maybe in a different way than just, you know, words, you know, written words and websites and whatnot. So I'm very excited. There seems to be a ton of interest in this topic of pre-qualification as a prime. So Barry, again, if you are on, if I could ask you to turn your camera on and your microphone on, we will invite Barry, who's kind of the expert on pre-qualification with ADOT. All right, we're still working on that one. Give us just a moment. Sorry about the delay.
Well, that's okay. I'll go ahead and start. Just again, thank everybody again for participating with us today. This workshop is divided into two parts. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Part one, of course, is coming up first, which is to cover the requirements of pre-qualification for general contractors in order to do business with the Arizona Department of Transportation. So under the Arizona Administrative Code, you must be qualified in order to work for the department. You might ask yourself, what is the Arizona Administrative Code? Well, it's an official collection of rules that govern state agencies. For instance, ADOT, ADOA, ADQ, any boards that are provided to the state as well as commissions. You can just Google Arizona Administrative Code to find out more about them. There are 21 titles. Under each title, there are several chapters, and you will find out from Barry today that the one that we're looking at for transportation and pre-qualification is under Title 17. So I just hope that after all you look at this, you'll be able to fill out an application and become possibly a new general contractor doing work for ADOT. So I'm privileged, as you can see, Barry's up there today, to introduce Deputy State Engineer Contracts, Barry Crockett. Barry's been with ADOT for over 30 years and has overseen the pre-qualification process for almost 15. So Barry, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm not sure I'm ready for the floor. I'm having difficulty showing my presentation right now.
Hey Barry, this is Rebecca. Could you try one more time? I did have to do a little checkbox. Is that working?
No,
Is it giving you a message or anything?
it's saying that I have, it just won't let me in on my desktop to present the presentation.
Yikes. Okay, would you, here, I'm gonna shoot you an email real quick. If you want to respond and attach it, I can do the sharing part.
Yep.
One moment, I'm sorry for the.
I think there are gremlins this morning in the computer systems.
All right. Actually, Barry, let me know when you hit send, and I'll be watching for it. And then in the meantime, Lorena, would you like to turn your camera on and provide an update from DBE Supportive Services?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm Lorena Nava, Program Manager for DBE Supportive Services. Thank you all for joining us for the first task force meeting of the year. We have a few exciting updates to share with you all. First, our DBE and Small Business Transportation Expo is on May 7th and will be held at the Mesa Convention Center. Registration is open, so please head over to ADOT DBE Expo and get registered today. This year's theme is SOAR 2024, as in support, opportunities, assistance, and resources, the 4 ways in which we will help DBEs and small businesses soar this year. It's a great opportunity to network with primes, DBEs, and small businesses in the industry, learn about upcoming projects, as well as hear from transportation leadership and more. It's definitely a must-attend event, so we hope to see you all there. Secondly, enrollment for our business development program has started. It is a 21-week program that encompasses a mixture of classes covering industry and business-related topics. Classes are aimed to begin in the later part of April, so please head to our website and complete the enrollment forms. Please also stay connected to our DBESS communications for upcoming solicitations, events, and announcements. And also be sure to subscribe to our DBE newsletters and snapshots. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me or our specialist, Alexa, for any support or guidance in pursuing opportunities with ADOT. Also, please stay tuned for our next virtual task force meeting, which will be on March 20th. And lastly, please reference the chat link for all of the events that I mentioned today. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Lorena. And then Barry, if I could have you turn your camera on and your mic on. And Amanda is back and I have the presentation, so we are good to go. Apologize for the brief delay, but let me go ahead and share my screen and then back to our presentation. Barry, take it away.
All right, thank you. Apologize for that little bit of hiccup there. So I'll be presenting today about contractor pre-qualification. Appreciate this opportunity, and hopefully all of us can learn something about it today. Want to go to the next slide? So just kind of a quick overview of contractor pre-qualification. Purpose basically really is to require for prime contractors to bid on ADOT projects. This really is an opportunity for the contractor to allow the department to become acquainted with that contractor's qualifications to bid work that we potentially are going to put on the street. It also gives us the opportunity to evaluate a firm's work history and to evaluate the personnel experience. And then the other part of that would be the financial condition. So all those really kind of come together as the pre-qualification board evaluates applications that are submitted. And as Amanda said before, the pre-qualification rules are Arizona Administrative Code. So we basically have to follow those. And I'll talk a little bit about that more in a minute. And then just something else from that standpoint, the pre-qualification board is appointed by the state engineer. You heard Greg Byers earlier, the state engineer. He appoints the pre-qualification board. There's a chair, there is a CPA that is required, and then there's a requirement for at least one professional engineer to be on the panel. The next thing I want to kind of do from an overview standpoint is talk a little bit about who must pre-qualify. So as a prime or a general contractor, you must pre-qualify in order to bid a project. We won't allow you to bid a project until you're pre-qualified. Subcontractors do not need to be pre-qualified. They are approved by ADOT on a project by project basis when a prime proposes them as a sub. So just want to make that clarification and distinction. If you go to the next slide. So jumping right in, basically, when you go and look at the application, one of the first things you're going to see is the listing shown on the screen of all the types of work. When you submit your application, you're going to request or check the boxes for the types of work that you seek pre-qualification for. There's a number of them there. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I will kind of point out a couple of things, and then I'll talk a little bit more about this at the very end to give some hints about how to do this better, not only for your preparation and planning, but for the pre-qual board when we receive your application. So the first thing is, are you going to request all classes of construction or not? If you request all classes, you click that, you select that one box, and then you don't need to select anything else. If you're not going to select that, then just do the individual boxes that you're seeking. One of the things that help me understand if contractors are using the latest application that's posted on the website is that very last box on the lower right-hand column. It says other. Older versions just had other. We've updated that because we would get a lot of submittals that would check the other box but would not tell us what other was. And so we can't guess, we're not going to guess. So we've updated that to be very specific. So when you click that box, it's specify and tell us what the other is that you're requesting for pre-qualification that's not on that list. All right, with that, let's move on to the next slide, please. So I've put the code rules on the side there, the R17-3202D, just as a reference in case you want to put this down. But these thresholds really become critical in understanding as you plan and prepare to seek pre-qualification. And hopefully by the time we finish here, that will make more sense. So the rules basically define what classification a contractor is. And those four areas are inexperienced, new, unknown, and known. So the inexperienced contractor would be one that doesn't have any projects completed as a prime in the transportation facilities concept. So they basically are work. So they really haven't done any work in for the transportation. A new firm would be one that was recently organized that has officers with experience with another contractor of positions of responsibility for transportation facilities construction. And then unknown firms would be firms that have experience as contractors. They just haven't completed a transportation facilities project for the department within the last 5 years. And then known firms would be firms that have successfully completed at least one transportation facilities project for the department within the last 5 years. So those are the four classifications, the definitions for each of those areas. And yes, a firm could at one point be a known firm to the department as far as these rules are concerned, and could then become an unknown firm if they don't complete a project within the last 5 years. The other definition, just to kind of put out there, are the financial statements. So the three financial statements that we have would be compiled, reviewed, and examined. Those are probably common if you've gone and talked to the CPA recently. We'll get more into that in a moment. So with that, if you want to go to the next slide. So here, those thresholds and definitions probably start to make a little more sense. So what this helps to do is inexperienced firms, as previously defined, would be able to get a pre-qualification maximum amount of $300,000. A new firm would be able to get a maximum 5 times their net worth. An unknown firm would be able to get maximum 5 times their net worth. and a known firm would be able to get a maximum 10 times their net worth. Now, understand that the rules typically talk about the maximum, and don't expect that you always get the maximum. It's just saying that's what the maximum can be. And we'll talk a little bit about the evaluation that's done in order to establish those pre-qualification amounts. The other thing as you're planning and preparing would be to understand the different financial statements, which is why I put those on there and what those limits comprise. So if you submit a compiled financial statement, the maximum that the rules allow to be pre-qualified for would be 300,000. A reviewed statement would be 1.5 million. And an examined statement is really based on the evaluation. There is no maximum there. So just from a practical standpoint, as you plan or prepare from this standpoint, let's just say hypothetically that you're doing $10,000 projects and you're doing lots of $10,000 projects and your net worth is maybe $20,000. You probably, from a business standpoint, doesn't make sense to go get an examined statement. A compiled statement or reviewed statement would probably work very well from that standpoint. As you continue to grow and build, you start doing maybe some $300,000 projects where your net worth increases and you're starting to see that all the projects that you're wanting to pursue might be in the $1.5 million range, then you might want to look at some things differently. So hopefully that helps and gives some examples of why you would want to do things a certain way and how you can plan and prepare from the type of financial statement that you want to provide. Next slide, please. All right, so here I'm going to talk briefly about determination of pre-qualification amount. So this truly, the determination of the pre-qualification amount truly is an analysis not only of the financial statement, but really of the entire application, which includes the financial statement that a contractor submits. In this particular case, some of the factors that we look at are current assets, current liabilities, which then kind of equate to the working capital. But we also look at adjusted working capital. From that standpoint, if that becomes a factor, we look at 50% of inventory and we remove loans to shareholders or related parties and prepaid expenses in calculating that adjusted working capital number. And then we also look at net worth. Those aren't the only factors we look at, but those are the principal ones. I'm often asked, just tell us what the equation is that gives me the pre-qual amount. There is no equation. And we're probably all better off because there is no equation. Because if there was an equation that we would be locked into per the rules, that would tie our hands of truly being able to do an evaluation. And from my experience, it's best that we can do an evaluation and not have our hands tied in doing that determination. So that was just kind of a quick overview from that standpoint of determining that pre-qualification amount. And if you want to look at more of the factors or the criteria that we use, I would just refer you to the pre-qual rules under, I think it's 202A, the section that talks about all the criteria. But it's basically what's in the application. All right, let's move on to the next slide, please. All right, so here we're going to transition and talk a little bit more about the pre-qualification process, not only for the first time submitting or the renewal, which is very similar. So pre-qualification application is submitted in either case, and a financial statement is submitted in either case. We have updated the pre-qual application on the website, and I'll provide that later in the presentation, where it's a fillable form. Hopefully that makes it easier. There's a couple of places in there where you put the firm's work history. A couple of those places you don't have to put that information in the application per se, because it's somewhat limited. You can attach a separate sheet that you provide to us if that's easier for you. what I would encourage you to do is make sure all of the information that's requested in the application is put on the sheets that you provide, both for as a prime contractor, as a subcontractor, and then even your equipment list from that standpoint that's being requested and submitted. So the application and the financial statement are required each year. So each time you submit, you do need to do a new application, a new financial statement each time. Annual renewal is required. The time frame for that basically is the pre-qualification expires 15 months after the end of a contractor's fiscal year. So for example, if your fiscal year ends on December 31st and the last financial submittal you gave us or statement you gave us in your application was December 2022, your pre-qual would expire at the end of March of this year, just to kind of put that in perspective. All right, next slide, please. So the pre-qualification board meets monthly. We do that just to try to keep up with all of the criteria or all the applications that come in. Sometimes, depending upon the workload that we get, we try even occasionally just to keep up with the submittals that come in to meet more than that. But for the most part, we meet on a monthly basis. Once we meet, we do the evaluation. We do send out a letter notifying the contractor of the decision the pre-qual board makes, and we do that in writing. And typically that letter, if you haven't seen one, it'll show this is the type of work you asked for. This is the type of work that the board pre-qualified you for, and this is the pre-qual amount that the board pre-qualified you for. What I would encourage contractors to do is not wait until they see a project that's been advertised to ask for pre-qualification. We specifically state in the rules that we want a pre-qualification application submitted a minimum of 15 calendar days before the bid opening of a project. And that's a minimum, that's the absolute minimum, because your schedules are busy, our schedules are busy, and sometimes it's tough to get all the board members together to evaluate that application. So I would encourage you not to put that off, but I do put that out there just kind of as the bare minimum time frame for making that submittal. Hopefully this never needs to come into play, but if it does, I just want to put it out there as part of the rules, reconsideration. So you get your letter from the pre-qual board and you're like, nah, I want a reconsideration. So the reconsideration request needs to be submitted in writing within 15 days of the decision that you received. These next two bullets are the two key things that if you go down that path, I would make sure you understand. In your request for reconsideration, there needs to be a basis for the request and the supportive data for that basis of request. And once we receive that, the pre-qual board will reconvene and look at the basis of the request and supportive data, and then make a determination based on that in writing as well. That doesn't mean submitting new information that wasn't in the first application, because that's really not a basis of a reconsideration or a supportive data. That's really a new application. So tell us what we missed in the original application you submitted, and we'll look at that and make a decision. And then the next step on that is, even after the pre-qual board looks at it for that first reconsideration, if you're still not satisfied, then you can always appeal to the state engineer and have that same process and discussion. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Thank you. So just a couple of key contacts, some information there. Again, I'm the chair of the pre-qualification committee. I list Iqbal Hussain. He is really what I would call an admin assistant. He supports us. He's the manager of the section. That's where the requests are going to be going to ask to bid on projects. So it's very good to have him immersed in the pre-qual board and those decisions, because it helps us facilitate that. So the requests and the submittals really go into him. As far as the website, it's listed there on the screen, and you can go there, click on the contracts and specification webpage, and there the application for pre-qual is listed. Address for submitting that, 205 South 17th Avenue, and then there is the phone number. With that, let's go to, I think, is the last page. So here I want to have a little bit of conversation and feedback of some of the things to help you as you plan and prepare to submit a pre-qualification. Some of the most, originally had most common errors, and it expanded. So it's not really errors, it's really the most common issues that we find in reviewing applications. So an inadequate document work history. So what might be some examples of an inadequate documentation of work history? So if you remember at the very beginning, I talked a little bit about how sometimes contractors submit all classes of construction. So an example of inadequate documentation of work history would be a submittal that comes in that checks the box of all classes of construction. Yet when we go and look at what the contractor actually performed for the last 5 years, it shows grade, drain, and pave, grade, drain, and pave, grade, drain, and pave. Well, grade, drain, and pave is not all classes of construction. So that kind of has a disconnect of you're asking for everything, but you really only do less than that. That would be somewhat of an example there. Or another example would be if you ask for specific types of work, but you don't show any supporting history for that type of work. Inadequate documentation of personnel experience, again, along the same lines. No financial statement. If there's not a financial statement, we will not process or even review the application until a financial statement is submitted. Incomplete financial statement. This is probably more common. Sometimes an entire financial statement isn't submitted, which would be the complete balance sheet, the statement of cash flows, the income statement, and all the notes. If those aren't all there, it will be rejected. Kind of going back to the work history, I say this kind of with a smile on my face. There are times where we've got applications in and your independent accountant that did your financial statement somehow can communicate better what a contractor does from a work standpoint than the application did. Please don't let that happen. But I will say that I've had to go to the financial statement sometime to better understand what a contractor actually does. Expired financial statement. So this is one where if the financial statement is more than 15 months old, we won't act on it. We'll just get back with you and let you know that your financial statement is old. You'll need to update that before we can act on pre-qualification. Another would be don't update pre-qualification information. So here I talked a little bit about the work history. The application asked for at least 3 years. If you want to provide more, you can. Sometimes, for example, we'll get a financial statement, just for example purposes, shows that a contractor did $5 million worth of work in 2023. Yet the work history that the contractor submits showed that 0 projects were completed in 2023. It's a little odd. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not impossible, but that would just mean that it's kind of rare and that you had a lot of work built up that you worked your way through, which then would have a lot of peaks and valleys as far as workflow. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but just be careful of that to show that you're updating your work history as well, just as an example. Another one, the application clearly states that the name of the firm on the application and the financial statement must be the same. So just make sure that's the case. Another one that I'll put out there is an A license doesn't pre-qualify contractor for all work. So licensing and pre-qualification are really separate. So don't think that just because you have an A license that you're going to get all classes of work. Continuous pre-qualification strongly recommended. This is one of those that I put on there kind of as an encouragement. You know, this is a good thing. It doesn't put you in a situation or us in a bad situation where we're trying to rush when a project is advertised that you want to bid on, or us trying to rush to try to get you pre-qualified when something's has been advertised that you're interested in. Try to keep, once you're going to get pre-qualified, try to have a continuous pre-qualification so you don't fall into one of those gaps. And then lastly, as I kind of had a conversation with this presentation with the pre-qual board, one of the things that they pointed out to me was tell them that, especially when you're coming in for the first time or early, you're trying to grow the types of work that you're doing. Let us know what you self-performed. That's very helpful, especially if you haven't done much sub work. Because sub work, you're pretty much self-performing. That's helpful from that standpoint. But sometimes the prime work doesn't always lend itself to knowing what you self-perform. So that can be very helpful. One of the things that I just thought of as I was finishing this list was sometimes when contractors provide their own separate spreadsheet, the type of work becomes somewhat nebulous. They'll just say construction is the type of work or general contracting. When you put a type of work, try to tie the type of work that you did or types of work that you did on a project to that very first list that I showed you of those 15 or so items. That can be very helpful. So with that, that concludes my presentation, my formal presentation, I would say, and I will stop here and entertain some questions or some clarification.
So Barry, thanks. That was great information. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So it sounds like everyone, as you heard Barry say, completeness is huge. And make sure that your application is complete before you send it in. Barry had a couple of questions. So is that application sent in only electronic, or is it a hard copy that's sent into the department? How is that? How does that go?
So we've tried to make that more convenient where the application can be filled out, you know, it's a fillable form on the website from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to submit the application as electronically, we'll accept that. The financial statement at this point still needs to be submitted hard copy.
Okay. One other thing that I thought about is there are no fees that an application turns in with it, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then a couple other things that I thought of. What about a joint venture that's applying? Do both of them have to be pre-qualified?
Yeah, sorry, I failed to talk about that. So thanks for bringing that up. So yes, joint ventures also need to be pre-qualified. You'll find in the application that there is a form that gives a very rough starting point for joint ventures. In essence, in a joint venture situation, both parties need to be pre-qualified. And then what you do is you submit an application or that form that says that these two pre-qualified firms want to submit as a joint venture on a project. And some of the specific questions that will be asked if you don't provide the documentation would be how much of the project that you're wanting to joint venture on will each firm be performing, not only from a type of work standpoint, but also from a dollar standpoint. Because in essence, what we don't want to have happen is that you're coming in to do work in a joint venture that exceeds the type of work or pre-qual amount that you have been given on an individual basis.
Yeah.
Some of the other things that would be looked at would be from the standpoint of who's going to be ultimately responsible for executing the contract in the submittal and also in construction.
Okay. Hey, Barry, once you're pre-qualified for the 15 months, you don't have to pre-qualify every time you respond to an advertisement with the department, correct? Especially if it's for the type of work that you've been pre-qualified in.
Correct. Once you get that pre-qualification, it's good for 15 months from the end of the a contractor's fiscal year end for the dollar amount and type of work that you're pre-qualified for. That is correct.
So I want to ask you, let's just say let's go back to if you get turned down, okay? How soon do you notify the applicant that they were turned down for their application? Is it like a week, 2 weeks after the pre-qual board meets, or is it immediate?
We try to do that as soon as possible. Sometimes it's a function of once, we have, like I said, Iqbal is part of our support on that. He has an admin person that does the letter. So sometimes it's a function of the timing of him getting it to her putting it together, and me getting it signed. It could be, I hate to put a time frame on there, but we try to turn around quickly. It could be a couple of days, it might be a week, but we try to get that turned around as quickly as possible.
And in the same vein of that, the same would happen for someone that was approved, correct?
Correct. We don't really, treat the ones that didn't get approved versus the ones that didn't. Now, I will say what we really try to do to the extent possible, because if you've read the application recently, the application says, have you ever been denied pre-qualification? So we take that very seriously. So there'll be firms who will submit, and if we start to see, hey, there's a possibility they may not get pre-qualified and they would get denied, and we have some reasons, oftentimes we will reach out to that contractor to say, do you really want us to move forward and deny you pre-qual in this scenario? If they say yes, we will do that. We may have some conversation and say, let's tap the brakes. Let's work on this together. Maybe we pause and redo this to minimize them all their future years of having to tell not only us, but any other state agency or government agency that they're pre-qualifying with or trying to pre-qualify with, that they've been denied. So we do try to work with them from that standpoint.
Okay. Hey, Barry, some folks don't understand what the terminology of self-perform work means. Could you quickly define that for them, for the audience, please?
Yeah, self-perform would be the company did it with their own forces.
Right.
That's in essence really what I'm defining self-perform, rather than subbing it out for someone else to do.
Okay. I think that Rebecca, are there some other things in chat that I missed? My chat has gone down as far as questions for Barry real quick.
Nope, you got it. That's all the
Okay.
questions that we've seen so far.
Okay. All right, great. So Barry, one other thing, I'm thinking about those thresholds, and so when can you move out of a threshold? Is it, if you're only doing $300,000 worth of work, then how do you go to something, do you do that kind of $300,000 worth of work for 1 year, 2 years before you guys give them the opportunity to move up? Did I miss that? Or can you help me out on that, when you could move up?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's probably no set answer. So let's just kind of have some dialogue here on that.
Okay.
I encourage annual submittal rather than more often, just because can you imagine if all contractors submitted to us every month, it would become very overwhelming.
Yeah.
There are times that, say, a new small firm that is growing might say, hey, we've got lots going on here. Can we reapply in, say, 6 to 9 months rather than waiting a year? We will entertain that. A lot of it comes down to a business decision. The type, the size of projects, the type of work. What I don't want people to get locked into here is that this is only based on money. Because if it was only based on money, we'd be talking to developers and brokers, not contractors. And we want contractors because we think that's best. So really it comes down to, and that's why I try to point out some of the criteria. What's the type of work you're doing? What's the size of project that you're doing? To me, it just doesn't make any sense if I'm doing $10,000 projects that I want to do an examined statement to try to pursue a $10 million project. Just doesn't make any sense. Now, there may be some business owners out there who say, no, it makes sense to them, and that's fine. That's why they're doing that. But that's kind of why I say that. When you're looking at that and saying, most of the project I'm doing are 300,000, do I really need anything more than a reviewed? So I would say it's kind of looking at your own business model, your own business plan, and trying to align type of work with size of project with the maximum, from the standpoint of pre-qual amount that you potentially can get, to start aligning those. Does that help?
Yeah, yes, it does. And back to this, you and I have talked about this before about the administrative code, and I wasn't sure, because I haven't looked at it just recently. Are the thresholds spelled out in the administrative code, or is that part of ADOT's criteria? And if so, how often do those thresholds change, or do they change at all? Or do you feel like you've got a good, kind of hold on, or a handle on what those thresholds should be?
So the thresholds are very explicit in the administrative code. That's not something that, tomorrow, if I wanted to change, I could change. The only, going back in time, I don't remember the exact time frame, but probably, 15 or so years ago, the one threshold for the reviewed financial statement that was put in play, as far as I'm concerned, when the rules first came out in the 80s, I believe that was a maximum of 700,000. We evaluated at that time and felt that just because how things had changed, that we proposed through the rulemaking process that amount be changed from 700,000 to 1.5 million. We didn't change the compiled, and we kind of left it as such. So that's a little bit of a history. That's a little bit of confirmation that they are spelled out in the code and the process that would have to go through. It took a couple of years to make that happen, but we did make that happen.
Yeah, and for folks that don't know, changing the administrative code is not something that's done or taken lightly. And that's why we have pretty much the same standard process that we've had for quite some time. Isn't that right, Barry?
That's correct.
Yeah. Rebecca, I'm not seeing the question in the chat. Can you help me out?
Sure. Can you kind of touch on and just briefly explain the different types of financial statements: compiled, reviewed, examined?
Oh, probably from an accounting standpoint.
Okay. I'm probably not the best, but give me 1 second and let me provide a little bit more of that. So compiled financial statement basically means financial statement prepared for form, appropriateness, and arithmetic accuracy. It doesn't express an opinion, for those who read financial statements. And if you do, I feel for you. I read them every now and then, but it doesn't express an opinion or provide any assurance regarding the financial statement. So it's the very, very lowest, which is why we keep that at 300,000. But we think that's minimal risk for the entry, and we think it's appropriate. The next level up is a reviewed financial statement. And a reviewed financial statement basically means a statement that includes an inquiry of company personnel and a review of the analytical procedure applied to the financial data. It does not express an opinion regarding the financial statement taken as a whole. That's a little bit different than the other one. So it's one level up. And then the examined financial statement, which obviously does cost more just because of the level of evaluation that a CPA does, is basically means the amounts and disclosures in the firm's financial statement, an assessment of accounting principles used, and the significant estimates made by management, and evaluation of the overall financial statement presentation. So there is very standard language that is governed by the accountancy boards that is put at the end of any examined financial statement. And there's a lot of work that goes into an examined financial statement. So hopefully that helps.
I think
If
that's
not-
great. Yeah, that's a great answer, Barry. For everyone out there, just remember those take time if you're going to your financial planner or your advisor, and they also may cost you some money. So when you're in preparation for putting this application together, don't forget that that's something that you're going to have to factor in along with the other personnel and equipment list that you have when you turn in your application to ADOT. Barry, I want to thank you today. I think this has been very, very helpful for so many people out there that might not know the mystic stigma of the pre-qual board. And I think you've been really helpful in showing us that it is achievable, that you can get this done. And there are lots of resources out there that can help everyone complete those. And if not, please feel free to call. We've got folks that can help you with some of that or answer some of your questions in the future. So again, I know you have a hard stop today, so thank you so much for putting this together. We will have your slides out for everyone to use, and we hopefully some of you will actually apply and be some new contractors for ADOT in their projects forthcoming. So thank you again, Barry.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'll just part by saying, you know, a lot of what I talked about today, being a pre-qual board member, is getting contractors pre-qualified to do ADOT work. But a lot of what we do is education. So if it's education along the way to help understand that, to make that better and easier for you, then talk to us. So with that, I will sign off and say thank you again.
Thank you. All right, well, we're about to, Rebecca's going to bring everybody into the next chat room for us to work on part 2. I hope you all were able to glean some valuable information from Barry's presentation. I thought he did a great job on that. So all resources, including that PowerPoint, will be available. Probably watch for the next email from either ABEX or from ADOT DBE services. So this next workshop that we're going, part 2, it will provide listeners with the opportunity to hear what prime contractors consider when qualifying subcontractors to work on their projects. With me today is an esteemed group of contractor panelists who perform a lot of work that ADOT advertises. Panelists today who are graciously agreed to assist us with the workshop are as follows. Scott Jones, there you are. Hello this morning. Regional Alternative Project Delivery Manager for Ames Construction, Inc. Grant Larson, thanks again. Grant, Pre-Construction Project Manager, Sunk Construction, Inc. We've got Scott Lane, from the Phoenix Area Manager for Granite Construction Company, and Jake Botcher, Project Manager for F&F Construction, Inc. Guys, I appreciate you being here and helping these folks understand a little bit more what you all do and what you consider for pre-qualifications. So let's start out right off the bat with, you know, I know that you all were watching Barry's presentation. So what are your biggest challenges when you all go to pre-qual each year? Is there anything that you've learned along the way that can make your application submittal easier? Grant, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, one thing that's interesting is just with the prime panelists you have, most of us are some of the larger, more experienced primes in the market. So I would venture to guess we don't have a lot of problems typically pre-qualifying on an annual basis. However, I have worked at a smaller prime contractor, and so I've seen firsthand, and Barry really touched on this very well, whenever you're seeking to do new types of work or having higher pre-qualification limits, and then you incorporate new key personnel or portions of your resume to grow your business, that's typically when your paperwork gets maybe less complete. So communication, in my opinion, becomes the most important part. Barry and his team are very well versed in this. They have no problem holding your hand and walking you through it, but you have to be patient with the process and make sure you get to them early so that you can get it taken care of.
Great. Jake, what about you?
Yeah, the biggest things are just the timeline, right? got to be mindful of the timeline of when they're due. And there's a lot of boxes to check and things to submit. They're pretty clear on what they want. So the issues have always just kind of been incompleteness on our end as far as missing a document or whatever. So they're pretty clear. So just follow those lines and should be okay.
Okay, Scott, anything you've learned? Oh,
Yeah, we've learned
yeah.
it's important to make sure you're documenting, as Mr. Crockett said, you want to have that resume that you submit every year. So we have a corporate team that we send everything to that helps with our pre-qualification process. But every job you bid, whether it's local government or build, you want to show that resume, and you also want to make sure your financial statements are done, by a competent person. If you have wonky financials, that can hold you up as well. So, and as the agency mentioned, a big part of what they do in that group is education. So lean into that to make sure you're not trying to bite off more than you can chew if you're on the smaller side.
That's a great suggestion. I'm going to have to go SL and SJ. So Scott Jones, how
Okay,
about you? What about Ames?
Well, so we have a person that does this full time, and I spoke with her. She's in Minnesota, and as a kudos to Barry and his team, she said that Arizona is probably the easiest DOT for the pre-qualification process out of the whole country, and we work in about 40 states. Kentucky's the worst. I got to throw that out there. That's what she told me. It's really bad. So be thankful, get your paperwork complete, and just be thankful that ADOT has a pretty good program. And she said some places it's really horrible because they want like depreciation on your equipment and all kinds of details that they don't ask for here. But the main thing is, get a standard statement put together that you can keep submitting and updating every year, so that it'll make it easier for you when you do your updates.
And one thing I will mention, and you all know this, that it is completely confidential. So if you're fearful about your financials being exposed to another competitor or the amount of equipment you have, those are held very tightly to the vest of the department as well as the contractor themselves. And they do and adhere to confidentiality, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, now we're into what a lot of people have come to listen to, and that is for you guys to share some basic steps that the subs must go through in order to become a qualified subcontractor with your firm. So Jake, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, ours is pretty basic, pretty easy. There's a link on our website that takes you to pretty much a little questionnaire form type of deal. You fill it out and send it in, and you're on our database and can get all our projects that we're bidding on. And you can, Sarah Gray handles it on our end, and her email is sgray@fnfinc.com. I can throw it in the chat. If anyone has any questions on getting it or wanting to talk about a specific project, she'll put you in touch with whoever's bidding that, and we can go in deeper. But pre-qual is pretty basic, not a huge ask, just filling out your basic information.
Okay. I noticed on your website that you had when you go to that subcontractor vendor, you do have your mission. You also have some other relevant information about subcontractors. And I will say to all of you, and I'm sure that is clear for those that are listening, please read about the company, understand what their focal of business is, what their books of business are, so that you can actually address if you will be a match for one of their types of work that they do. If you just submit something and they don't even do that type of work, then you haven't really done your homework. So I would definitely suggest that you look at their mission, the types of work that they do through their projects that they have advertised out on the website. And when I mean advertised, I mean that they show that they've completed, because all of them do a really good job of showcasing some of their projects. So Scott Jones, let's go to you.
Okay, so we have a portal, and I'll get it on the chat, but we have a deal called Pipeline where we pre-qualify, and we're working on getting it linked to our website. But for right now, I'll put in our chief estimator's email, and you can just contact him directly, and he will get you through the pre-qualification process that we have.
Do you ever, when you're looking at some of that, or when he's looking at it, does he give you any like bits of information as to why why you're pre-qualifying them, or, was there a problem before, or?
So a couple things that we deal with is, one, we look at safety. That's really important to us. As you go through, when you see the form, we'll have insurance requirements. I did have a discussion with him, and I would say that most people that are going to apply from this will not meet our insurance requirements, and we expect that. So when you see that, don't get worried about it that you're not going to pre-qualify. We take everything on an individual basis, and I think most corporations are the same way. We set the bar pretty high on a lot of the requirements, and then kind of take everybody on an individual basis and get down so we can make things work out. And then, of course, we're going to want to know your scope of work and your work history and your backlog, that type of stuff for any given project.
Okay. All right. Grant, how about you and Sant?
I just put the link to our subcontract pre-qualification portal into the chat, so you can look at that. But similar to everybody else, you can go through our website to reach it, or you can contact Sant directly, whether it's me or whoever's working on the project, and we'll send out an email. And within this, you'll have a link to Building Connected, and Building Connected will walk you through the process, which typically includes W-9, certificate of insurance, EMR, OSHA 300. And then there's also a requirement for financials. That is one where, just like Scott Jones was saying, that can kind of hang people up because they don't want to share their financials. If you don't share them, your pre-qualification limit will be significantly lower. If you want to keep them private, we do have an option to share that directly with our CFO, simply over the shoulder, so you're not emailing anything, and then we can pre-qualify you that way.
Okay, very good. How about you, Scott Lane? What does Granite do?
So in the Arizona region, we have a vendor setup form. I will send a link with that email, put it in the chat here in a second. And that goes to our estimating assistant that works with our chief estimator. So the first step for us is to get set up as a vendor. Fill that out. Don't wait till the day before the bid, be proactive on it. And that gets you in our system as somebody that when we have a bid event, we will send out outreach, and basically in that vendor setup form, it talks about the scope of work you perform, and where geographically you're willing to work. Like these other gentlemen said, the biggest hang up for us seems to be with the smaller contractors is the insurance requirements. And that's something that we look on a case-by-case basis. On bid day, we're an inclusive company. We want to make sure we're not excluding anybody. So we'll take bids from anybody. But if it's a new company coming into the market and they don't have strong insurance, that creates a second look as we're closing the bids out.
Does this, so guys, forgive me if this divulges your own individual company, do each one of you have a insurance requirement number, or is that something you would share or couldn't share with us as a group? Anybody can take that answer if they want to, or if it's no, that's something that we decide on at each company and you don't want to divulge it, just let me know.
Yeah, for Ames, I couldn't tell you what it is. It's like a 3-page document. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I think the most important thing to say is for what we're requiring, again, you're not going to probably qualify for on insurance, and we're going to take it as an individual basis. So if you're listening in and you apply, just submit what you have and we will work with you accordingly.
So when you say you work with them, do you work with their insurance provider, or do you work through your insurance provider on that?
So we have a corporate person that's out of the insurance industry, and she specializes in insurance. And so what we do is we sit down and we look at your scope of work, what you're going to be doing, how many employees, all that, and then we would work with her in the risk profile and say, what do we really need for this subcontractor, and get a realistic number that's specific to the individual for the limits of liability for all the different things we require.
Okay, anyone else have anything else to offer on that? I just wanted to help our audience kind of understand that enigma of that insurance qualification that they may go through, or wonder, oh, do I have enough? Is it sufficient? You know, etc. Anything else? Okay, all right, thanks. Hey guys, understanding that ADOT utilizes different procurement methods to build work, we've all known that since about 2000. We've gone from hard bid to design construction manager at risk, design build, and design build P3 mega projects. I'll start with you, Grant, and tell me, does your firm's pre-qualification requirements change depending on the type of project?
Our pre-qualification requirements do not change, but I will say with some of these mega projects that come out, we do end up having deeper discussions with some of them. Let's just take the South Mountain Freeway, for example, that that both Ames and Granite were a part of. And but in pursuing that, the pre-qualification was all the same to get pre-qualified. But when you start digging into the depth of a 22-mile freeway with, system to system interchange freeways, you have to have a different and deeper talks about how much they can perform and what they can perform to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to take part in the project. So it might not be a formal thing, but informally, we do have to have deeper discussions.
Great. So Jake, you're on the Broadway curve now. What did you all have? Did you all change?
That's news to me.
I thought F&F was part of the Broadway curve.
Yeah, we are. I thought you meant me personally.
Oh, no.
But yeah, we are.
Sorry, I meant F&F. I apologize. Oh.
So, sorry. Anyways.
That's okay. That's all right. So did you all change your pre-qual for your subcontractors on the Broadway curve?
No, just echoing what Grant has been saying, it's pretty much the same throughout, especially when it comes to ADOT type of work. It's the standard pre-qual. The only time it might change is if we were going after some private type of owner who has a serious safety requirements on their project, and that might change the pre-qual a little bit more, but that is a case-by-case basis that we would be in talks with before the project bids.
Okay. All right, Scott Lane, do you have changes?
We have, most of the time it's standardized on these large JV projects. During the pursuit mode, we'll sit down to make sure we're in alignment with our partner, just to make sure that between the teams, there's nothing that's one is more stringent than the other. But on the smaller scale projects, we'll bid anything from $1 million up to several $100 million. We're just trying to keep that pipeline open. That's why if you can just get set up as a vendor with us, and we'll take a look at your insurance. We don't want to be excluding anybody, but my recommendation is to start small. Pick a specified scope of work, follow the ADOT current advertisements, and there's some jobs out there that are under $1 million. They're 300,000, 700,000. That would, if I was starting out in business, I would start looking at those instead of trying to bite off a big project. That you need to build some resume to get into that arena.
So Scott Jones, how about you? Anything?
So with regard to the design build, I'd kind of gonna piggyback on Scott Lane here. The pre-qual is the same for us. Those jobs are really tough, and we can see that new contractors can get tore up pretty hard on them, just because they're super fast paced and everything. So be honest with what your capabilities are. With regard to the alternative delivery, if it's a CMR, design build, any of those, again, pre-qualification is the same. Where we might get a little bit more in depth is if we feel like you're somebody we want to bring on the team on the qualification stage. So that's a point where if you bring value, we might want to say, hey, do you want to be a dedicated subcontractor? And then we would dig in a little bit deeper because we feel you have a good reputation, or maybe you strengthen our proposal. And so I think that's where, and it's not super common, but it happens. And that's where we really start digging into what's your reputation? Do you have skeletons in the closet? You know, that type of stuff. So kind of where we are with that.
So one of the questions that's been posed up here, since we're all talking about one of the qualifications being insurance, is so a subcontractor has a premium of X and you have to bump up his insurance requirements. Do you reimburse the subcontractor for that difference between what he's paid and what it may cost him to carry that additional insurance?
I'll take that one.
Yeah.
I would assume, I guess in our mind, if you have to pay higher premiums you probably need to have that discussion and adjust your bid accordingly.
Okay.
And because if we're going through the pre-qual process, you're going to know that before you submit your bid, where we need you to be. So really I think that's on the subcontractor to say, hey, for this job or this contractor, I have to pay higher premiums. So I need to roll that into my units, into the price of my bid.
Okay, does that apply? Okay, great. Does that apply to all of you?
Yeah, I would second that. It's similar to like a bond. If somebody can't meet a bond threshold, when we're evaluating bids on bid day, we try and get everybody apples to apples. So if somebody can't get there and we have a minimum threshold, we add money in our sub-quote library to get everybody at the same level bonding. We would do the same thing with insurance.
Okay. All right. Hey, it's kind of a similar question because we've talked about changing, whether you change your qualifications or not, but sometimes in a joint venture, or maybe even the mega projects, all three or all two parties require the sub to be pre-qualified. Is that the case for, Jake, with you, is that the case with F&F? You and your partner, do you both require the sub that you're looking at to be pre-qualified by each entity of the joint venture?
Yes and no. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to pre-qualify for us, the chances are whoever we're joint venturing up with, you probably would meet the same with them. Companies typically venture with each other that are similar. So the odds of meeting one requirements and the other, I would say, are probably slim. But if that were to come up, then that would be a discussion that, the senior people in charge of that project would have talks about and can figure out a way to get that corrected.
Well, we've seen some new companies come in, right, to joint venture with Arizona companies or contractors in recent. And so I was just curious if they would like to have that comfortability, as those of you that have already done business here, to have this apply as well. Grant?
Kind of going off of what Scott Lane was talking about, when you're in a joint venture partnership, I think one of our first discussions is we get in alignment with all of these things so that we can know and agree what we're going to do to pre-qualify. And even if you have a 50-50 joint venture, there's always going to be somebody that leads that joint venture. And most of the time, I would say we go with whoever's going to lead the joint venture with their process. And if there's something that we might differ on, then we discuss it, and that way the same information goes out to all the subcontractors.
Okay. Oh, that's actually good to know. But how would a subcontractor know who the lead is going to be? Where would they find that information in a joint venture to know who they would be, filling out the pre-qualification forms for?
So with regards to, for us, if we're in the lead, we're going to have a joint venture name, of course, and I don't think they're going to have to determine that, because most of these joint ventures, the big ones, they end up you know, kind of becoming their own business in some respects. If it's a true joint venture, I would imagine if a line item joint venture could be different, where each contractor is taking certain scopes of work, but it's not a true splitting of the profits and all that, if that makes sense. So
Like, yeah, I guess I'm looking at, so who, again, let's just say, the F&F police or Dragados slash, joint venture. Did they, go to Dragados slash police? Did they go to F&F to pre-qualify? Who is the lead on that? How would you know? Is it in the information that's out in the solicitation? So when it comes to DBE services, is that where it would be probably when they're asking who to follow? In the DBE solicitation, when they come out and say, we're looking for subs, that would probably be your JV venture lead that would probably be asking for that information if it's not already published.
I know at Sun, we'll typically designate 1 or 2 key people that handle most of the pre-qualification and subcontractor and DBE outreach. And most of these are such a long burn, whether it's a CM at risk with pre-construction services or a design build, that we can have sometimes up to a year of doing this. And so we'll get out into the market and we put full-time people to reach out to every single subcontractor and supplier we can to let them know and to make sure that it's an inclusive environment for all of them to have an opportunity to be a part of the project. So unless you're just not wanting work and you're not showing up at ADOT DBE events, you're going to end up knowing about it somehow, because it's in every publication and every single public event that we can go to, we'll advertise it.
Okay, all right, that helps me. You know, on the mega projects that we've had there, well, let's go back. So hard bid projects, there are some very defined normally scopes of work that you advertise for subcontractors. And they're pretty generalized to each contractor and what they need when they're looking at that scope of work. But I do know that when you get into mega projects, you're able to add more scopes of work than you would normally have on like a hard bid project. So, you know, for those out there that may not do rebar or may not do trucking or something like that, what are some of those scopes of work that you might use on a mega project that aren't normally what you would use on a hard bid project? Scott Jones, you want to help me there?
I would think that you could run into some scopes that are like administrative type stuff or management help. I know a lot of times that we have people come and they have management services that, I don't know, we run into this with the DBE community where they might help people understand how to manage work, I guess. And then we're like, well, we kind of do that. But I think that for managers, and you get a big mega project going, you have to start filling seats. It could be some opportunities there for more admin type roles and stuff.
Security, building, any of those kinds of things either when you establish a on-site work presence or approximate close to project presence? Are there some items like that?
Yeah, we've seen some instances on at some of these DBE events that ADOT's hosted where we'll have a need for security to some extent. They're not large contracts in the scheme of things, but it's a pathway entry into the market. And as you're coming in as a sub, you don't, as they mentioned earlier in the presentation, you don't need the same qualifications that you would need if you're trying to apply as a prime for ADOT. So that's a good point, Amanda, that, look for those smaller bits of work to bite off as you're coming into this line of work.
Yeah, and I would say, answer me, let's say we have some out-of-state contractors that are looking to do work with you all. I guess we would advise them that they make sure they're registered with the ROC first, correct? Arizona ROC, because they must be an Arizona registered contractor before they do the work, correct?
Yes.
Yep, and then they would just go into your subcontractor vendor information and fill out that information moving forward.
So I want to add one thing, Amanda, that
Sure.
on the big projects, you can run into multiple subs on the same scope of work.
Okay.
So if you're a small sub and you see that, you know, your competition, 2 other contractors are already doing it, don't assume that there's not enough work where you can get in there as well. Because sometimes the scope of work is so big that you just have to get it divvied up to get the work done.
Great
And
point.
yeah, but go ahead, Grant.
No, that's just an excellent point. Some of these jobs are so big, you could just use rebar, for example. You could have every rebar company in town on the same job.
Well, another thing that I think that we should look at is the timing of the pre-qualification for subcontractors with you all. So if it's perhaps a mega project, we don't really have to worry about that so much, or even construction manager at risk. But you really should probably emphasize that on hard bids, they need to get their pre-quals in. They can't just wait till a day before the bid goes in to say that they want to bid with you. Is that correct? Can you all give me some brief kind of information on that?
Well, I'll just start, Mandy. One thing is we require every subcontractor to pre-qualify every 12 months. And so we have 2 full-time people at Sunt that's all they do is follow up with the people that are within our database to make sure that they're up to date. And when their pre-qualification lapses, they'll receive an email immediately that we need it updated, so that when a hard bid does come up, we're not suddenly scrambling trying to see who's available, that we always have a stream of pre-qualified subcontractors.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Have Jake, you want to answer that too?
Yeah, I don't know if we typically reach out every 12 months or whatever it is, but yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
Okay. Anybody else want anything else to offer?
Yeah, I'll offer a little bit. So, you know, for example, if ADOT was to advertise today a project that's bidding in a month, you know, I would say within the next week, if you want to bid that project to us, you know, request and get set up as a vendor. Because if we just get your bid emailed to us within 24 hours of the bid and you're not in our system, we'll look at it, but it's under a lot tougher lens at that point in time. We either need to know who you are, or we're really scrub that number to make sure, you know, because we don't want to sign anybody up and get them in trouble. It's no good to bring on somebody who's coming in this market, sign them up into a rough job. But if it's about preparing ahead, and if you really want to do work with us, there's plenty of time to get set up as a vendor.
Great. So let's do a real quick lightning round to wrap this up. You guys tell me in one short little brief sentence, what is the most common mistake made by subs when submitting pre-qual work to you all? Your firm, exactly. So let's start. Jake, we'll go back to you.
Well, I guess that would be not having some sort of contact to reach back out to you. If you're going to have issues, or if you're really wanting to do work for us, if we can't get a hold of you somehow, then other than that, everything can be fixed with a phone call or an email. So
Okay. All right. Scott Jones.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger ones is be clear on your scope of work, and then don't assume that we're going to come looking for you. I get this call from the people who have like porta-johns or something, and they're like, well, you know, how do we work with you? And I always tell them, our estimating department, when they're trying to close a bid, they're not going to be calling the porta-john guys, right? And so you have to be assertive and be clear on your scope, and just take the reins at getting that thing in to us, and not at the last minute.
All right, Grant.
Very similar to both Scott and Jake, it comes down to communication. Just make sure you're talking to us and following through.
And Scott Lang, anything?
I would say the most common mistake I'll see is somebody who thinks they're a DBE contractor, but they're not registered in UTRAX. So educate yourself on that, because that's, we have goals and requirements from the ADOT, for example. We're actively looking to make sure we meet that goal and exceed it as our core value, being inclusive. But if you're not set up where ADOT will give the big contractors credit, we can't list you under that portion when we submit on bid day.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate your wisdom on this, and I hope that it's been helpful for everyone that was listening in today. Let us know if we can get you additional information or any answers. So thank you again from the panelists and myself. Have a great day, and Rebecca, it's back to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Great job moderating that discussion. Grant, Scott Squared, and Jake, thank you as well for your participation. I'll invite you to turn your cameras off and your microphones off. We do have one more update from ADOT before we end our DBE task force meeting today. So Gabe Demarby, I hope I said your name right, I've been practicing. I invite you to turn your camera on and your microphone on and give us an update.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes. Are you able to turn your camera on?
It's letting me now. Let's see. Can you see me?
Yay. Perfect. All right.
Perfect.
Gabe,
Awesome.
I will step into the background and please do provide your update.
Definitely. Thank you for your help. Kudos to all the panelists today. It was great discussions, great topics. I hope everyone took a lot back from this. I know I did for the pre-qualification process. My name is Gabe Demarby. I am the Contract Compliance and Training Officer with BECO, and my team manages and leads ADOT's DBE and OJT programs. For today, I'm going to go over our current FHWA DBE goal for fiscal years 2024 through 2026. I was trying to share my screen. It looks like it's disabled, but I did drop in the chat our website, which I was going to show. On our website, you'll see what the current DBE goal is. That is 12.55% to be achieved again from federal fiscal year 2024 through 2026. So that took effect October 1st of 2023. How did we come to this 12.55% goal? As a condition of receiving US DOT funds, all state DOTs are required to conduct disparity studies to establish their annual or triannual DBE goals. Here at ADOT, we'd like to take it one step further and conduct availability studies in between the disparity study to analyze the current market pool. Availability study was completed in 2022, which led to a new FHWA overall DBE goal of 12.55%. So here at ADOT, we have a race-conscious and race-neutral Federal Highway Administration DBE program. What that means is we achieve that 12.55% goal via race-conscious means and race-neutral means. Race-conscious means ADOT assesses every FHWA contract out there for DBE opportunities. It comes to the BECO compliance team for review, and we look at the scope of work, the project location, the type of work that's going to be performed, and we make a goal assessment. That is part of the narrowly tailoring process. Now, not every single goal will have a 12.55% goal. That is where we narrowly tailor. Depending on location, depending on scope of work, it can have a goal of 6%, 12%. It could even have a goal of 0%. That is where race neutral participation comes in. We achieve that goal. Again, the 12.55 is broken down. We want to achieve that race consciously of 7.65%. And then we want to achieve the other portion of the via race neutral means 4.9%. So what does that exactly mean? Is prime contractors bringing on additional DBEs above and beyond a goal. That also means bringing on DBEs on race neutral projects that have been assessed a project goal of 0%. So for the first 3 months of federal fiscal year 2024, which is October 2023 to December 2023, you'll see if you go on the website, there is a little table here that it shows what our utilization is at time of award. Let me be clear that this only identifies committed DBEs, which is race conscious DBEs. So this table does not identify race neutral DBEs that are added during the semi-annual period throughout the reporting period. So as we state right here, stand right now, we are currently at 7.8% halfway through the first half semi-annual report. As I mentioned earlier, our race conscious portion of that goal is 7.65%. So we are currently meeting that race conscious portion. Another disclaimer is this 7.8% does include the 2 active alternative delivery projects that were kind of mentioned earlier, the Broadway Curve project and the current I-17 Flex Lane project. Now, those 2 projects have already met their commitments, their DB commitments. So they're not necessarily committing to new DBEs. They are still bringing on race neutral DBE participation, but that does bring our reporting down a little bit. If we are to go the route of reporting traditional bid build contracts, we're looking at more about 10.91% DB participation at time of award for the first 3 months. That is huge. That's a kudos to the entire industry, prime contractors, the DB contracting community. End of the day, we want to encourage prime contractors and DBEs to help us achieve our race neutral portion of the contract. That's via primes or DBEs becoming primes and being awarded prime contracts. Just some quick numbers out there. ADOT awarded 11 additional prime contracts for fiscal year 2023 to DBE primes. That's awesome. We want to see that number continue to go up. We want to encourage prime contractors to bring on just 1 more DBE above their goal, and then bring on DBE participation on race neutral projects. That will help ADOT meet its overall annual goal of 12.55%. I can talk for days, but I know everyone's probably a little exhausted by now. But is there any question that I can help answer with all of the information I just threw at you?
All right.
Questions?
Gabe, I don't see anything. We'll keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A. We do know how to get a hold of you. So if we have any questions pop up before we end the session, we're happy to send them by email. We can always answer them. So we are running just a couple minutes past our allotted time. Gabe, thank you so much for giving us the update. Gabe did drop the link into the chat. That will be part of all of our post-event materials. Gabe, I'll invite you to turn your camera off and your microphone off. And with that, we will conclude our Q1 of 2024 DBE Task Force. There will be a second session on pre-qualifying as professional services. So this one was much more the contracting side, right? The construction side of the house. We will be looking at doing a session in March for the professional services, the design side and consultant side. So with that, again, we will be distributing all the presentation materials, the link to the recording. And last, I will just say thank you so much for your time and participation from all of our panelists, Barry and Gabe and Lorena from ADOT, and all of our panelists and all of our attendees. Thank you so much for making the time today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Be safe out there.